Okay, so Peirce starts off this series of articles with a very simple distinction. He asks, what is the difference between a doubt and a belief? And if you're sitting there thinking, that's a stupid question, he sort of says that too. I hope you read the article. Where he says, everybody already knows the difference between a doubt and a belief because we know the difference internally when we're asking a question and when we're making a statement. So everybody already knows the difference between a doubt and a belief. But that, he says, isn't what does it. That's not what distinguishes doubt from a belief. And so he's trying to give what we might call a phenomenology of doubt and belief, describing what it is. So he says a doubt is an uneasy and unsatisfied state. From which we struggle to free ourselves, right? When we have a doubt, when there's something we don't know, we try to get rid of that doubt and replace it with a belief. So a doubt is an uneasy and dissatisfactory state. It is, in that sense, self-destructive. It's self-destructive. It doesn't mean that it makes you suicidal or that it will harm you. It means that a doubt destroys itself. And it does that, put this over here. It does that by encouraging us to overcome doubt with a belief. So if you think of this, he doesn't use this exact word, but all of his description fits perfectly. A doubt is like an itch. An itch, when you have an itch, what do? You probably scratch it, right? And when you scratch it and then you don't itch anymore, you probably stop. This is not rocket science. You follow me so far, I hope. So a doubt is self-destructive like an itch is self-destructive. When you itch, you try to get rid of it, right? So the itch doesn't destroy you, but it gives you reason to take action to destroy it. Follow me on that? So if you think of a doubt as like an itch, then you're where you need to be. And he says, a doubt is the only reason we undertake inquiry. Inquiry, as you see in the article, he's using it in a technical sense, a very narrow sense. Inquiry is anything you do to get rid of a doubt and replace it with a belief. So if a doubt is an uneasy and dissatisfied state, a belief is calm and satisfactory. A belief also is settled. That's the same thing. I won't put it up here though. A doubt is the end of inquiry. Remember, if you think of it like an itch, right? Once you scratch the itch, you don't scratch anymore. This is like scratching. I have an itch, I scratch it. When I'm done, calm, satisfactory, no itch. It's the end of the scratching. It's the end of inquiry. Once we have a belief, we don't have the doubt anymore. And a doubt, he tells us, is the only reason to undertake inquiry. He goes on. He does say that a belief, it has the nature of a habit. It guides our desires and shapes our actions, he says. So think of it like this. When you're thirsty, what do? You get a drink of water, well, or something. But what you probably don't do is get a drink of sand, right? Why? Because you don't believe that sand will quench your thirst, right? So that's what he means by A belief is of the nature of a habit. It guides our desires and shapes our actions. If I'm thirsty and I believe that water will quench my thirst, well then I desire water. And I will go get some water. I do not go get a cup of sand, right? So a belief guides our desires and shapes our actions. It doesn't make us do anything right now. It just, this is why it's a habit, as the nature of a habit. If we have a belief that drinking water will quench our thirst, does that mean you're all out drinking water right now? No, because you might not be thirsty. But if you were thirsty, you would go get some water, right? So that's the nature, the sense in which a belief is like a habit. It doesn't give us a cause for any immediate action, but it indicates that there is something about us that by having this belief, we are in a condition where under the right circumstances we will behave in a certain way. For example, if I believe water will quench my thirst, when I am thirsty I will get water. Doesn't mean I'm getting water now, right? So a belief is not a cause for immediate action. It just means that under certain circumstances you're likely to act a certain way. A doubt, on the other hand, is a cause for immediate action. Just like an itch, right? An itch is a cause for immediate action. When you itch, you don't say, well, gee, when I'm itching, I will scratch. It is a cause for immediate action. You undertake that action right then to get rid of the itch, to get rid of itself. Same thing with a doubt. You feel this uneasiness, this dissatisfied state, and it is a cause for you to take some action. What action? Something. Anything. Scratching, right? Anything. Whatever you do to pass from the uneasy, dissatisfied, nasty state of doubt into the calm, satisfactory, confident, you might say, state of belief. Anything you can do to get from this uneasiness to this easiness, to get this cause for immediate action. A doubt is the only cause for inquiry, and with the adoption of a belief, inquiry ends. Peirce says, we might say this isn't enough for us. Actually, what he says is we may fancy this is not enough for us. That we seek for beliefs, that we don't want to just believe something, we want our beliefs to be true. And Peirce says, put this fancy to the test and it proves groundless. That is, he says it's not true. Because as soon as a belief is reached, a settled opinion, he calls this, as soon as a settled opinion is reached, inquiry ceases. And if it did go on, it would just be like talking into the air. It wouldn't mean anything. It says it would be without purpose. So, with the irritation, I should put that there, because he does say that. With the irritation of doubt, inquiry begins, and with the settlement of opinion, it ends. We may fancy that we seek for an opinion that is true, that we seek, as he says, not merely an opinion, but a true opinion. Put this fancy to the test, and it proves groundless. For as soon as a firm opinion is reached, all inquiry ceases. And Peirce goes on to say, if it did go on, it would be without purpose. So, we say, I don't want to just have any old opinion, I want my opinions to be true. But the reality is, once we don't itch anymore, we don't scratch anymore. We're done. So, if this is true, if a belief is of the nature of a habit, he says, well then, why don't we come to conduct inquiry, right? To come to a belief the same way we develop all of our other habits, by just like doing it over and over. You know, when you do something over and over again, it becomes a habit. So he says, goodbye doubt and belief. We're moving on to methods of inquiry. So if a belief is of the nature of a habit, why not just come to a belief the same way we come to all of our other habits? Why not just grab a belief, just pick it out of thin air, just say something, and repeat it to yourself over and over and over and over again until you believe it? This, he says, he's going to call this the method of tenacity. Pick a belief, saying it to yourself over and over again until you feel good about it, until you're comfortable with it, until inquiry ends, until you've got that habit, right? And he says, you may say this is foolish, right? But people actually do this, you know? And if you can only go your whole life avoiding anything that might undermine that belief, as long as you never run across anything that would cause you to doubt it, right, to pass back into the state of doubt, then who cares? In fact, he says, at one point, he says, if a person can only go through their whole life without running into any evidence that, or any reason to doubt their belief, then I can't see what would, why we would tell them not to. In fact, he says, it would be an egotistical impertinence to suggest to this person that their method is irrational. Rationality doesn't have anything to do with this. This is just pick a belief until you love it. And he gives some really great examples, right? He talks about the ostrich sensing danger, buries its head in the sand, and then calmly declares, there is no danger. And since there's no danger, why should I bother raising my head to check, right? He even says this is something like, this may be the happiest course, right? That a person who can just believe in something and believe it really strongly, they feel very confident in their beliefs. Great faith yields great peace of mind, he says. And so, as long as I have the habit, right? As long as I've picked my belief, then that's fine. And if I can just go through my life without running into anything that contradicts it, then why shouldn't I? Pick your belief, repeat it until you love it. Learn to turn away from anything that might undermine it. To treat it as evil and hatred, or hateful, anything that might undermine your belief. If you need a modern example, think politics, right? There's my side is right, anything that happens on the other side is evil. You should never listen to Trump. Why? He might convince you of something. He might convince you of something that's wrong. We both know he's wrong. And if you don't like me doing this with Trump, say Obama. Well, it doesn't make any difference, right? Why? We all know that so-and-so, Trump, Obama, is wrong, and so we shouldn't listen to their arguments because they might discourage us. They might dissuade us with their falsehoods and lies. So we shouldn't even listen to the other side, right? Not bad. So this does really happen in real life, a lot, actually. So learn to turn with hatred against anything that might counteract it. He gives another example of a guy. He said his phrase is something like, a person who believes that they would surely go to hell were they to receive their ingesta otherwise than through a stomach pump. And he's just saying, like, suppose somebody thinks they're going to go to hell if they eat food. They can only get their nourishment through a stomach pump. You may say, well, gee, that sounds like a horribly inconvenient life. But that person would say, yeah, but I'm going to heaven. You know? So it's worth it. And as long as nothing happens to shake my confidence in that belief, then there's really nothing we can say against this method. Alas, Peirce says, sooner or later, no matter how great your efforts are, sooner or later you are bound to run into somebody who disagrees with you. But what do you do then? What he says is, it would be apt to occur to you in some saner moment that other people's ideas are just as good as yours. That the fact that you believe something gets your calm, settled state, your habit and all that, the fact that you believe it, when you run into me, who believes something else, of course you just say, well, Brandon's evil, that's fine. But it may stick in your craw, right? You may go home and think, well, gee, Brandon disagreed with me. And his way of believing is just as good as mine. So how can we determine whether I'm right or Brandon's right? This is what he calls, he says, the social impulse makes the method of tenacity impossible in practice. He says, what's the phrase he uses? He says a person may adopt this belief, but they will be unable to hold their ground in practice because eventually they're going to run into someone who disagrees with them. And as soon as they sit back and think, well, gee, that other person's ideas may be just as valid as mine, we're back to doubt. Right? We've got a problem. So the problem, he says, is that we have this innate tendency to compare our ideas to others. An instinct he even says it's an instinct that is too strong to be suppressed without fear of destroying the species. And that's a little hardcore. The idea, though, is that we have an instinctual desire, or not even desire, we just have an instinct to compare ideas with each other. And so the problem then becomes, he says, how to fix an idea. When he talks about fixing an idea, he's not talking about repairing it. He's talking about like affixing it, to make it permanent, right? How to fix an idea, how to solidify an idea, not just in the individual, but in the community. Because we're going to run into each other. We're going to compare ideas. And so when I'm running into you and you have different ideas than I do, how am I supposed to decide whose ideas are better? Well, the method of tenacity isn't going to help us make that decision. I might be very happy to say, well, you're just evil. And so I don't have to listen to you. And then what I believe is right. But again, as he says, some nights I'll be sitting up, late at night thinking, gee, I wonder if so-and-so's ideas are just as valid as mine. And so the social impulse and instinctual tendency to compare ideas to others undermines the method of tenacity. And that is why tenacity will be unable to hold its ground in practice. I'm going to leave it off here in just a minute, and I'll pick up with the rest of them in the next video. But I want to point out a couple things to you. And that is, remember, what he's doing is giving a phenomenology of doubt, belief, and inquiry. So when he's talking about these different methods of inquiry, he's not suggesting one or the other. He's starting with his definitions of doubt, belief, and inquiry, right? Where doubt is the uneasy and dissatisfied state from which we struggle to free ourselves and move to the calm, satisfactory state of belief. Anything we do to bridge that gap is inquiry. And so he's just saying, well, what could someone do to move from the itchy, irritated state of doubt to the calm, satisfactory state of belief? So he's saying, well, this is something someone might do. They might just pick an idea, especially because, as he says, the belief is of the nature of a habit. How do we develop other habits? By just repeating to ourselves. So he's going to list 4 different methods. This is the first one, tenacity. You may think that there's a 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, or 10th one. That's fine. He doesn't really think so. He thinks he's pretty well covered the ground about how we can satisfy doubt and move into a calm, satisfactory state of belief. And so his first method he considers is just merely pick an idea out of thin air and repeat it until you believe it. How will that work? Well, it has this problem. I'm going to leave it there for now. I'll come back in the next video and we will make sense, hopefully, out of the rest of all this stuff.